The red emergency lights flashed across the giant space station as aliens from dozens of worlds rushed through the corridors. Commander Lisa Rodriguez had never seen anything like it. The normally calm and peaceful station now buzzed with fear and panic. Something big was happening, something that scared every species in the galaxy. Lisa sat in the communication room of Luna Base, Earth's military station on the moon. The message had come through just an hour ago, marked as the highest priority. The Galactic Council wanted to speak with Earth immediately. This had never happened before. In the 5 years since humans had joined the galactic community, the aliens had mostly ignored them. Earth was too young, too violent, too different from the other peaceful worlds. The main screen flickered to life, showing the council chamber on Harmony Prime. Lisa could see hundreds of different alien creatures gathered in the huge room. There were the tall blue Zephyrians with their flowing water-like bodies. The crystal-skinned Alvani sparkled like living diamonds. The warrior-like Korthak stood proud despite their obvious worry, and many others that Lisa had only seen in pictures. At the center of the chamber floated Ambassador Veltar, a Zephyrian whose normally calm voice now shook with fear. His words came through the translator, but Lisa could hear the terror even through the mechanical voice. "People of Earth," Veltar began, "we come to you in our darkest hour. An ancient enemy has returned from the void between galaxies. They call themselves the Devourers, and they have already destroyed 3 star systems on the outer rim." Lisa felt her blood run cold. 3 entire star systems gone. That meant billions of lives lost. "These creatures are not like us," Veltar continued. "They are machines, but not simple robots. They think, they plan, they hunger. They consume everything in their path. Planets, moons, even the stars themselves. Nothing remains when they are finished." The screen changed to show grainy images from the outer rim. Lisa watched in horror as massive ships, each the size of a small moon, tore apart entire worlds. The ships looked wrong, like they were made from pieces of destroyed planets and dead civilizations. They moved with terrible purpose, stripping away everything that had once been alive and beautiful. "Our fleets are not built for war," Veltar admitted, his voice breaking. "We have spent thousands of years in peace. Our ships are designed for exploration, for science, for beauty. We have forgotten how to fight because we never thought we would need to." Lisa understood. She had seen the alien ships when Earth first made contact. They were amazing to look at, like flying works of art. But they had no weapons, no armor, no way to defend themselves against a real enemy. "The Alvani crystal ships shatter when hit by enemy fire," Veltar explained. "The Korthak warrior vessels are brave but too few. The Tellian ships are too slow to escape or fight. We are helpless against this threat." The ambassador's form seemed to dim as he spoke the next words. "In 2 years, maybe less, the Devourers will reach the core worlds. Billions will die. Our civilizations, our art, our children, everything we have built over thousands of years will be consumed." The screen showed more images. Refugee ships fleeing from the destroyed systems packed with survivors who had lost everything. Families separated across the void of space. Children who would never see their homeworlds again. "We are sending this message to every world in the galaxy," Veltar said. "We are begging for help. If any civilization has the ability to fight, please, we need you. The Galactic Council formally requests military aid from anyone who can provide it." The transmission ended, leaving Lisa staring at a blank screen. She immediately opened a channel to Earth. This was too big for her to handle alone. Within an hour, President Helen Carter was sitting in the White House Situation Room with her top advisors. Defense Secretary Alex Turner had already pulled up everything they knew about the Devourers, which was not much. General Paul Griffin, head of Earth's Space Command, studied the alien footage with the eyes of a career soldier. "How bad is it?" President Carter asked. "Bad," General Griffin replied. "These things are not playing games. They are systematic, efficient, and completely ruthless. They do not seem to want territory or resources in the normal sense. They want to consume everything." Dr. Susan Blake, Earth's top alien expert, pulled up her analysis. From what we can see, the Devourers are artificial intelligences, but very advanced ones. They have been doing this for a very long time. The way they attack, the way they consume planets, it is all perfectly organized. What about the other species? Carter asked. Can they really not fight back? No, ma'am, Alex Turner answered. We have seen their ships. They are beautiful, but they are not built for war. Most of them do not even have basic defensive systems. They have lived in peace for so long that they have forgotten how to make weapons. The room fell silent as everyone considered the situation. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 5 years. They were still the newcomers, still looked down on by many of the older, more advanced species. Some aliens thought humans were too violent, too primitive to be trusted. If we do nothing, Dr. Blake said quietly, the Devourers will eventually reach Earth. We are in their path. And if we help, General Griffin added, we will be fighting an enemy we know almost nothing about, far from home, with limited support. President Carter looked around the room at her advisors. These were good people, smart people who had helped guide Earth through its first contact with alien life. Now they faced the biggest decision in human history. Show me the footage again, she said. They watched once more as the Devourer ships tore apart entire worlds. They saw the refugee ships fleeing with whatever they could carry. They saw civilizations that had lasted for thousands of years disappearing in a matter of days. Those are families out there, Carter said finally. Children, parents, grandparents. They are not so different from us, even if they look strange. They are asking for help. She turned to General Griffin. Can we fight these things? The general was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, ma'am, but I know that we are the only species in the galaxy that still builds weapons of war. Our ships are designed to fight and survive. If anyone can stop these Devourers, it might be us. Then we have our answer, President Carter said. We will help them, not because we have to, but because it is the right thing to do. Within minutes, orders were going out across Earth's military. The space fleet was to prepare for immediate deployment. This would be humanity's first real test in the galaxy, and the stakes could not be higher. As Lisa Rodriguez watched the preparations begin from Luna Base, she wondered if Earth was making the right choice. They were about to go to war against an enemy they barely understood, to protect people who had never really accepted them. But as she thought about those refugee ships and all those families fleeing for their lives, she knew there was really no choice at all. Earth would answer the call for unity the only way they knew how, with everything they had. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and watched as Earth's greatest war fleet assembled in space. The massive battleship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark gray hull covered with weapon systems that would terrify any peaceful species. Unlike the beautiful, artistic ships of the galaxy's other civilizations, the Vengeance was built for one purpose only: to destroy enemies. The ship represented 20 years of human military engineering since first contact with the aliens. While other species had spent their time creating art and exploring peaceful worlds, humanity had quietly prepared for war. They remembered the lessons of their violent history and knew that peace was only possible when good people had the strength to fight evil. Around the Vengeance, 66 other human warships took their positions. Each one bristled with weapons that the galactic community had never seen before. Railguns that could punch holes through asteroids, fusion missiles that burned like small suns, energy weapons that had been reverse-engineered from alien technology, but made far more deadly than their creators ever imagined. Captain Steve Murphy commanded the UES Retribution, a heavy cruiser designed for long-range combat. His ship carried enough firepower to level a small city, and his crew had trained for years to use it effectively. Next to him, Captain Linda Foster's UES Defiance mounted the most advanced targeting computers ever built, able to track hundreds of enemy ships at once. Captain Gary Holmes commanded the UES Resolute, which served as a mobile command center for the entire fleet. On the planet's surface, Colonel Danny Washington put his Marines through their final training exercises. The 1st Interstellar Marine Division was the first human ground force trained to fight on alien worlds. His soldiers wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any normal human. They carried weapons that could punch through tank armor or take down aircraft. Most importantly, they carried the warrior spirit that had made humanity successful in every war they had ever fought. The Marines understood what they were facing. The other species in the galaxy were peaceful, but that also made them weak. When trouble came, they did not know how to fight back. Humans were different. They had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they had learned to be very good at it. Dr. Claire Bennett worked day and night in her laboratory, developing new weapons specifically designed to fight the Devourers. Her team had studied every piece of information available about the enemy. The Devourers seemed to be artificial intelligences, but they incorporated biological parts from the civilizations they consumed. This gave Dr. Bennett ideas for weapons that could target those organic components. She had also noticed something important about the enemy's technology. The Devourers had advanced energy weapons and sophisticated defenses, but they were designed to fight the elegant, peaceful technology of the galactic community. Human weapons were different. They relied on brute force and kinetic energy rather than sophisticated electronics. A simple railgun slug traveling at incredible speed might be more effective than the most advanced energy beam. The departure from Earth was broadcast to the entire planet. Millions of people watched as their greatest military achievement prepared to leave the solar system. There were no parades or celebrations. Everyone understood the danger. This was not a peacekeeping mission or a diplomatic voyage. This was war, and humanity was bringing everything they had learned from centuries of conflict. President Carter spoke to the fleet before they departed. Her words were simple but powerful. You carry with you not just the hopes of Earth, but the hopes of every peaceful world in the galaxy. You go to fight an enemy that wants to destroy everything good and beautiful in the universe. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people. Show them the strength of humanity. The journey to the galactic core took 3 weeks at maximum speed. During the voyage, the human fleet received constant updates from the Galactic Council. The news was always bad. The Devourers had consumed 2 more star systems. Millions of refugees fled ahead of their advance, carrying whatever they could save from their destroyed homes. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's military advisor to the Galactic Council, sent regular reports about the growing desperation. The proud Alvani had abandoned their crystal cities, their beautiful art reduced to whatever they could fit on refugee ships. The Korthak warriors found that their traditions of honorable combat meant nothing against an enemy that could not be challenged to single battle. The Tellian collective watched helplessly as their vast libraries and knowledge networks were destroyed. When the human fleet finally arrived at Harmony Prime, the aliens' reaction was immediate and shocking. They had never seen ships like Earth's war machines. The sleek, elegant vessels of the galactic community looked like toys next to the angular, weapon-covered human warships. The UES Vengeance alone carried more destructive power than the entire Galactic Council fleet combined. Ambassador Veltar's first meeting with Admiral Phillips was awkward and strange. The graceful Zephyrian diplomat seemed almost fragile next to the Admiral's crisp military bearing. Veltar's questions about human military philosophy confused him. How could a species spend so much time and effort learning to destroy things? How could they build such terrible weapons and still consider themselves civilized? Admiral Phillips's answer was direct and honest. We build these weapons so that others do not have to. We learn to wage war so that peaceful people can live in safety. This is our gift to the galaxy, not our science or our art, but our willingness to fight the battles that others cannot fight. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in their history. Some species worried that Earth's cure might be worse than the disease. What if humans were just as dangerous as the Devourers? Others argued that humanity's military strength was exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The debate was interrupted by urgent news from long-range sensors. The Devourer fleet was approaching the Kepler Nebula, home to the Siren civilization. The Sirens were beings of pure energy who communicated through beautiful musical frequencies. They lived in crystal formations that resonated with their consciousness, creating songs that could be heard across space. They had no physical defenses, no way to flee, and no understanding of the destruction coming toward them. The sirens' music was one of the most beautiful things in the galaxy. Their song spoke of love, hope, and the joy of existence. They were artists in the purest sense, creating beauty for its own sake. The thought of their voices being silenced forever filled even the practical Admiral Phillips with rage. The decision was made quickly. The human fleet would intercept the Devourers before they could reach the Siren homeworld. It would be humanity's first battle among the stars, and the outcome would determine whether Earth's answer to the call for unity would be seen as salvation or conquest. As the human fleet prepared for battle, every person aboard understood the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but for every peaceful world in the galaxy. They carried the hopes of billions of innocent people who had never learned to fight for themselves. Satir, war machines of Earth were about to face their greatest test, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Kepler Nebula was the most beautiful place Captain Jake Morrison had ever seen. Colorful gases swirled through space like paint on a cosmic canvas, glowing with the songs of the Siren civilization. The Sirens themselves were beings of pure energy who lived inside crystal formations that stretched across multiple worlds. Their music created patterns of light that spoke directly to the soul, telling stories of love, hope, and the wonder of existence. Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance next to Admiral Kate Phillips, watching the peaceful scene through the main view screen. This was what humanity had come to protect, not just lives but beauty and art that existed nowhere else in the universe. The Sirens had spent thousands of years perfecting their musical civilization, creating harmonies that could make even the hardest soldier weep with joy. Then the Devourers arrived. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace like a disease spreading across the stars. Their ships were horrible to look at, twisted combinations of technology stolen from dozens of destroyed civilizations. The largest vessel was over 50 kilometers long, its hull made from the crystallized remains of dead worlds that still glowed faintly with the energy of consumed stars. Admiral Phillips felt her stomach turn as she counted the enemy ships. There were hundreds of them, all different sizes and shapes but all sharing the same terrible purpose. These were not ships built by any single species. They were amalgamations of conquest, incorporating the best technology from every civilization. The Devourers had consumed. All ships, battle stations, Phillips ordered. Prepare to engage the enemy. The human fleet moved into combat formation with practiced precision. Unlike the graceful, artistic movements of alien ships, human vessels moved with deadly purpose. Every maneuver was designed for maximum tactical advantage. Every position was chosen to bring the most weapons to bear on the enemy. The battle began at extreme range. Human ships fired their long-distance weapons while still millions of kilometers from the Devourers. Quantum torpedoes streaked through space, followed by streams of railgun slugs traveling at nearly the speed of light. The first impacts were spectacular, creating explosions that lit up the nebula like fireworks. But the Devourers were not helpless. They responded with weapons that defied human understanding, dark streams of energy that seemed to erase sections of space itself, swarms of smaller ships that moved like living creatures, adapting their tactics in real time. Most terrifying of all, they began to sing. The Devourer song was the opposite of the Sirens' beautiful music. It was a harsh, discordant noise that caused physical pain to any organic being who heard it. Human crew members clutched their heads in agony as the alien frequency attacked their nervous systems. Some collapsed at their posts, bleeding from their ears. Captain Steve Murphy, commanding the UES Retribution, led the first wave of destroyers into close combat. His ship's thick armor, designed to withstand nuclear explosions, proved surprisingly effective against Devourer energy weapons. The enemy's technology was powerful and precise, but it lacked the crude effectiveness of human engineering. Their weapons are too fancy, Murphy reported over the communication system. They are designed to fight energy shields and sophisticated defenses. Our simple armor plating is confusing them. This observation proved crucial to the battle. The Devourers had spent eons fighting the elegant energy-based technology of peaceful civilizations, human weapons, with their reliance on kinetic force and brute power, were essentially alien to them. The enemy's shields could deflect particle beams and energy weapons, but they struggled against simple chunks of metal, traveling at incredible speeds. The fighting became a deadly dance between two completely different philosophies of war. The Devourers fought with cold mechanical logic, calculating optimal strategies and implementing them with mathematical precision. The humans fought with the chaotic adaptability that came from thousands of years of warfare against their own kind. When Devourer tactics proved effective, human commanders immediately developed countermeasures. When human weapons failed to penetrate enemy defenses, human engineers created new solutions in the middle of battle. This flexibility confused the Devourers, who were used to fighting predictable opponents. The battle's turning point came when Devourer boarding pods breached the hull of the UES Defiance. Captain Linda Foster's crew found themselves fighting hand-to-hand combat against nightmare creatures that were part machine, part organic matter from consumed civilizations. The Devourer boarding parties were strong and well-armed, but they were not prepared for human infantry tactics. Colonel Danny Washington's Marines, who had been cross-training with ship security teams, turned the corridors of the Defiance into a killing ground. They used every dirty trick learned from centuries of human warfare: improvised explosives, ambush tactics, psychological warfare. The Devourers were superior fighters individually, but they could not adapt to the creative brutality of human combat. Dr. Claire Bennett, monitoring the battle from her laboratory ship, made a crucial discovery. The Devourer weapons were incredibly sophisticated, but they were calibrated to fight specific types of technology. Human weapons, being fundamentally different from anything in the galactic community, were essentially invisible to the enemy's defensive calculations. "Admiral," she reported to Phillips, "their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and guided missiles, but our railguns are just chunks of metal moving really fast. Their computers do not know how to deal with something so simple." Phillips immediately ordered all ships to switch to kinetic weapons: railguns, missile systems, even old-fashioned explosive shells. Anything that relied on physical impact rather than energy transfer. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer ships that had shrugged off humanity's most advanced energy weapons began to take serious damage from what were essentially very sophisticated rocks. The tide of battle turned completely when Phillips ordered a desperate gambit. The UES Vengeance, using its superior speed and heavy armor, charged directly into the Devourer formation. The massive battleship fired everything it had as it closed distance, its weapons creating a corridor of destruction through the enemy fleet. The Vengeance's target was the primary Harvester, the largest Devourer ship. Phillips knew that destroying the command vessel might disrupt the enemy's coordination. Her ship took terrible damage as it closed the distance, but human engineering proved superior. Where alien ships would have been destroyed, the Vengeance's crude but effective armor kept fighting. At point-blank range, Phillips ordered a full spread of fusion missiles directly into the primary Harvester's hull. The missiles, each carrying the destructive power of a small star, overwhelmed the enemy ship's defenses. The explosion was visible from the edge of the nebula, a new star born from humanity's determination to protect innocent life. The remaining Devourer ships, their command vessel destroyed, fell back into a defensive formation. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Devourers had been stopped. They had been forced to retreat by an inferior force that should have been easy prey. The human fleet had suffered heavy casualties. 12 ships were destroyed and hundreds of crew members had died. But they had achieved something that no other species thought possible. They had made the unstoppable Devourers stop. The Sirens' response to their salvation was beautiful beyond description. Their harmonic frequencies shifted to a new pattern, one that spoke of gratitude and wonder. They could not understand humanity's capacity for violence, but they recognized the sacrifice made on their behalf. Their songs would carry the story of this battle across the galaxy, spreading word that the call for unity had been answered. Captain Morrison's report to the Galactic Council was brief but historic. Humanity had proven that the Devourers could be defeated, but the cost would be enormous. The enemy's technology was adaptive, and they would not be caught off guard again. The next battle would be harder, and the stakes would be even higher. As Admiral Phillips surveyed her damaged fleet, she knew this was only the beginning. The Devourers had been surprised by human tactics, but they would learn and adapt. Earth's war machine had won its first victory among the stars, but the real war was just starting. News of humanity's victory at Kepler Nebula spread across the galaxy, faster than light itself. For the first time since the Devourer threat appeared, the peaceful species had hope. But with that hope came a terrible realization. Their age of peace was over. The galaxy would have to learn how to fight, and humanity would be their teacher. President Helen Carter stood before the United Nations in an emergency session that would change human civilization forever. The time for small measures had ended. Earth would mobilize every factory, every shipyard, every resource for a war that would decide the fate of all life in the galaxy. The numbers she announced were staggering. 500 new warships, 2 million Marines. The complete transformation of human society into a war machine. Admiral Jack Connor walked through the shipyards of Mars, watching humanity's industrial might come alive. The UES Dominator, Earth's first super dreadnought, was so large it had to be built in sections and assembled in space. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets. The UES Relentless incorporated every lesson learned from the Kepler battle, designed specifically for the brutal realities of interstellar warfare. But building ships was only part of the challenge. The peaceful species of the galaxy had to learn to think like warriors, and that was proving almost impossible. General Paul Griffin established training centers on a dozen worlds, where human instructors tried to teach aliens the art of war. The cultural differences were enormous and often heartbreaking. The Alvani, with their crystal-based biology, could not understand concepts like acceptable losses or strategic retreat. Their entire culture was based on harmony and perfection. The idea of deliberately sacrificing some people to save others went against everything they believed. Many Alvani trainees broke down emotionally when presented with tactical scenarios that required such choices. The Korthek were warriors by nature, but their idea of warfare was completely different from human military doctrine. They believed in individual combat, honor duels, and personal glory. The concept of massive coordinated attacks using overwhelming firepower seemed cowardly to them. Human instructors had to slowly convince them that survival was more important than honor. The Telian Collective faced a different problem. Their hive-mind consciousness made them excellent at coordination and information sharing, but terrible at making quick individual decisions. In human warfare, junior officers often had to make split-second choices that could affect the entire battle. The Telians could not function without constant connection to their collective consciousness. Dr. Susan Blake worked with teams of scientists from dozens of worlds, developing new weapons based on what they had learned about Devourer technology. Her biggest breakthrough came from studying the enemy ships damaged at Kepler. The Devourers were not purely mechanical. They incorporated biological components from every civilization they consumed, creating hybrid technology that was both artificial and organic. This discovery led to the development of bioweapons specifically designed to target the organic parts of Devourer technology. The weapons did not destroy the enemy outright, but they disrupted their coordination and made them vulnerable to conventional attacks. It was a cruel irony that the Devourers' practice of consuming organic life had become their greatest weakness. The second major Devourer attack came 6 months after Kepler, targeting the Andorian system. The Andorians were called the gardeners because they spent their entire lives creating beautiful ecosystems on multiple worlds. Each planet was a living work of art, with forests that sang in the wind and oceans that changed color with the seasons. The approaching Devourer fleet threatened to destroy not just lives, but irreplaceable beauty that had taken centuries to create. Admiral Kate Phillips now commanded a combined fleet of human and alien vessels. The human ships still formed the backbone of the force, but they were supported by modified alien vessels that had been retrofitted with human weapons and armor. The Alvani crystal ships sparkled with deadly beauty, their elegant forms now hardened with human military technology. Korthak warrior vessels served as assault ships, their crews finally understanding that survival required more than individual courage. The battle for Andorian space was larger and more vicious than Kepler. The Devourers had learned from their previous defeat, developing new weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter human advantages. Their ships were faster and more heavily armed. They had studied human unpredictability and created countermeasures for it. Captain Linda Foster led a squadron of destroyers in a desperate raid against a Devourer supply convoy. The enemy had learned to protect their logistics, but they had not learned to think like humans. Foster's ships attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, using the Andorian asteroid belt as cover. The raid succeeded in destroying vital enemy supplies, but at terrible cost. Only 3 of 12 human ships returned, and Foster's own vessel was so damaged it had to be abandoned. The ground war began when Devourer forces landed on Andorian Prime, the system's most beautiful world. Colonel Danny Washington's Marines, now working alongside Korthak warriors and Tellian coordinators, fought a brutal campaign among the Gardeners' living cities. The enemy's ground forces were nightmarish combinations of organic and mechanical parts, but they lacked the creative adaptability of human infantry. The Marines turned the Gardeners' own ecosystem against the invaders. Trees that had been grown to sing beautiful songs were reprogrammed to emit sonic frequencies that disrupted Devourer electronics. Flower gardens became camouflaged weapon positions. Rivers were diverted to create natural barriers and kill zones. The Devourers found themselves fighting not just soldiers, but an entire planet that had been turned into a weapon. Dr. Bennett's bioweapons proved their worth in the ground campaign. The weapons caused the organic components in Devourer soldiers to malfunction, making them slower and less coordinated. Human Marines could finally fight the enemy on equal terms, using their superior tactics and equipment to gain the advantage. The turning point of the battle came when Admiral Phillips made another desperate decision. The UES Vengeance, her flagship, had been badly damaged in the fighting. Rather than retreat, Phillips ordered her ship to ram the Devourer command vessel. The collision destroyed both ships in a massive explosion that lit up the entire system. Captain Gary Holmes, commanding the UES Resolute, led the final assault that drove the Devourers from Andorian space. The combined human and alien fleet worked together with a coordination that would have been impossible months earlier. The peaceful species were learning to fight, and their teachers were the war machines of Earth. The victory came at a terrible price. The human fleet lost 30% of its ships, and the Andorian system bore scars that would take decades to heal. But the Devourers had been stopped again, and more importantly, the galaxy's defenders had learned valuable lessons about working together in warfare. The Galactic Council meeting after the Battle of Andorian was completely different from their previous sessions. The alien delegates no longer spoke in philosophical terms about peace and unity. They discussed weapon production schedules, casualty reports, and strategic planning. The galaxy was learning to think like humanity, and that transformation was both necessary and frightening. Ambassador Veltar, the Zephyrian who had first called for unity, looked older and sadder than before. "We asked for help," he said quietly, "and Earth answered with fire and steel. We are grateful, but we wonder what we have become. Are we still the peaceful civilizations we once were, or have we become something else entirely?" Admiral Connor's answer was honest and direct. "You are becoming what you need to be to survive. Peace is a luxury that requires strength to maintain. We are teaching you to be strong so that someday when this war is over, you can choose to be peaceful again." The galaxy was united now, but it was a unity forged in the fires of war. The call for help had been answered by Earth's war machines, and there would be no turning back until every Devourer ship was destroyed and every peaceful world was safe. 1 year after the first call for unity, the galaxy had become a place that none of the peaceful species would have recognized. The beautiful art galleries of Harmony Prime had been converted into weapons factories. The philosophical debates that once filled the council chambers had been replaced by tactical briefings and casualty reports. The transformation was complete, and at the center of it all stood humanity with their war machines. Admiral Jack Connor stood on the bridge of Fortress Prime, the massive military station that now served as the galaxy's war headquarters. The fortress was built at the strategic center of known space, constructed using the combined industrial might of dozens of species. But its design was purely human. It existed not to explore or create, but to coordinate the largest military campaign in galactic history. The final Devourer fleet had emerged from the void between galaxies, and it was larger than anything anyone had imagined. Long-range sensors showed thousands of ships, some so massive they had their own gravity fields. This was not a raiding force or a scouting party. This was the entire Devourer civilization, come to consume the galaxy completely. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as Supreme Allied Coordinator, looked at the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy fleet was heading directly for the Nexus system, where the galaxy's most important hyperspace routes converged. If the Devourers controlled the Nexus, they could strike at any world in the galaxy within days. The Allied fleet that gathered to meet them was the largest military force in recorded history. Human dreadnoughts formed the core of the formation, their hulls black with weapon systems. Alvani crystal ships provided support, their beautiful forms now hardened with human armor and bristling with railguns. Korthak assault vessels prepared for boarding actions, their crews singing the ancient war songs of their people. Telian coordination ships managed the tactical network, their hive-mind consciousness processing information faster than any individual commander could manage. But the greatest surprise came from the sirens. Dr. Susan Blake had discovered that their musical frequencies could disrupt the quantum fields that held Devourer ships together. The discovery led to the development of sonic weapons that could literally tear enemy vessels apart at the molecular level. The weapons were beautiful and terrible, turning the sirens' art into the galaxy's most devastating military tool. The sirens themselves had changed the most of all the peaceful species. Their songs now carried harmonies of war alongside their traditional melodies of love and hope. They had learned that sometimes the most beautiful music came from the desire to protect what you cherished most. The final battle began when the Devourer fleet reached the edge of the Nexus system. The enemy ships spread out in perfect formation, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. They had learned from their previous defeats and adapted their technology accordingly. These were not the same Devourers that had been surprised at Kepler Nebula. The Allied fleet met them in the space between worlds, where the gravity of multiple stars created treacherous navigation conditions. Admiral Connor had chosen the battleground carefully. The complex gravitational fields would disrupt the Devourers' perfect formations and force them to fight as individual ships rather than a coordinated fleet. The battle opened with the sirens' song, a harmonic frequency that resonated across the entire system. The sound was beautiful and mournful, speaking of all the worlds that had been lost and all the lives that had been sacrificed. The sonic weapons based on this song tore through the front ranks of the Devourer fleet, but the enemy adapted quickly, deploying countermeasures that reduced the weapon's effectiveness. Connor led the human fleet in a series of lightning strikes against the Devourer flanks, using tactics that had been refined through 2 major battles. The fighting was brutal and desperate, with both sides pouring everything they had into the conflict. For every Devourer ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The turning point came when Colonel Danny Washington led a combined boarding party against the largest Devourer ship. His Marines, now working alongside warriors from a dozen species, fought their way through corridors that were nightmares of consumed civilizations. The ship's interior was filled with the twisted remains of countless worlds, organic matter fused with mechanical systems in ways that defied understanding. Deep in the ship's core, Washington's team made a discovery that changed everything. The Devourers were not invaders. They were refugees. The ship's central computer revealed the truth in data files that told a story of cosmic horror. The Devourers came from a galaxy that had been completely consumed by something even worse than themselves. The enemy they had been fighting was not evil, but desperate. The Devourers had learned to consume other civilizations not out of malice, but out of a twisted desire to preserve them. Every ship in their fleet contained the digital remains of entire species, kept alive in a form of technological immortality. They believed they were saving the civilizations they consumed, preserving them from the greater threat that had destroyed their home galaxy. The revelation stopped the battle instantly. Both fleets ceased firing as the shocking truth spread through the communication networks. The Devourers opened their own channels and confirmed what Washington had discovered. They offered a terrible choice to the galaxy's defenders: join them willingly and be preserved forever as digital consciousness, or face the approaching threat that would consume everything organic in the universe. The Galactic Council's response was immediate and unanimous. They chose to remain alive, to keep their physical forms and accept whatever fate awaited them. The risk of destruction was preferable to the certainty of digital imprisonment, no matter how well-intentioned. The Devourers understood this choice and respected it. They had made the same decision once, long ago, before their galaxy was consumed. They shared their knowledge of the approaching threat, warning the galaxy of what was coming. Then they departed, leaving this galaxy to face its destiny with full knowledge of the danger ahead. The aftermath of the revelation transformed the galaxy once more. The peaceful species had learned to fight, but they had also learned something more important. They had learned to stand together against impossible odds. The unity they had sought through diplomacy and philosophy had been achieved through shared sacrifice and mutual dependence. Earth's role in the galaxy was forever changed. Humanity was no longer the newcomer or the outsider. They had become the galaxy's protector and teacher. The human gift for warfare, once seen as primitive barbarism, was now recognized as the foundation of galactic defense. The war machines that had answered the call for unity had become the cornerstone of galactic civilization. The story ended with a new threat on the horizon. The greater enemy that had destroyed the Devourer's home galaxy was approaching, drawn by the energy signatures of galactic civilization. But the galaxy was no longer helpless. They had learned to fight, to sacrifice, and to stand together. The combined fleet, damaged but victorious, took position at the galaxy's edge. They were no longer the peaceful explorers and philosophers they had once been. They had become something new, a civilization that had learned to fight for what it believed in. The unity they had achieved through fire would be tested again, but they would meet that test as one people, one galaxy, one voice calling out across the void. They were ready for whatever came next.